Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen, welcome back to what was on sale at the grocery store. So it's a couple days after Canadian Thanksgiving. And anytime in the days following, a big holiday, you go to the grocery store, there's always stuff on sale. So there was a pile of beef that was marked down and then had a 30% off sticker on it as well. So I bought some different things. I've got most of it in the freezer. Today we're going to use this, which is often labeled here as beef finger meat. And it's the mechanically stripped beef from between the beef ribs. And so it's like long fingers. I've just chopped it up. We're going to make a stew. And I'm going to break every rule of stew making because I'm under a time crunch. I just want to get it in the pot, get it in the oven, let it go for 6 hours at 325 degrees Fahrenheit, forget about it, and move on and do some other things. So I'm not going to brown anything. There's going to be no browning. Chicken surprise, there's no browning. It'll be okay, chicken. It'll be okay. Because you know what? The Maillard reaction happens. There's a bunch of different variables for how the Maillard reaction happens. High temperature, short amount of time, fry it off, you get the Maillard reaction. Low temperature, long amount of time, guess what happens? Maillard reaction. Same sort of thing. So I'm just going to shove everything in the pot. I'm going to use some of our homemade beer, a porter. Head on over to our brew making channel if you want to see me make the porter. This is just dump and go. And I gotta tell you, dump and go makes perfect sense. This would be great in a crock pot. So in goes the beef finger meat. Big pile of meat. A couple of stalks of chopped up celery. A couple of carrots chopped up. I just pulled them right out of the garden out front. They are so fresh. Handful of mushrooms, just halved or quartered. Pearl barley, pot barley works just as well. I think actually that is pot barley, not pearl barley. And I'm using the barley because I had it in the cupboard. I'm using most of these ingredients because they're ingredients that I normally have. You can play around with the vegetables. You don't want carrots, use parsnips. You could put in any of the root vegetables would go really well in here. So potatoes, rutabaga, turnip, that sort of thing. Would be absolutely fantastic in here. When I was at the grocery store, there were boxes of pearl onions on that cart at the back. You know the one at the back where stuff's almost rotten? Boxes and boxes of this, super cheap. So I'm going to put in some pearl onions. Otherwise, I would have just used, regular old brown or white onions that you have. Don't think too much about it. Just work with flavors that you like, that you think go together. Use the flavor base. I'm not going to put any garlic in here, but a couple of cloves of garlic crushed in would be really good. Definitely really good. A little bit of rice instead of the barley would be fantastic. I've got some beef stock, so I'm going to put about half of the beef stock in. Beef stock, chicken stock, water. You need a liquid in here. We're going to supplement it with some beer, but you need sort of a base level of liquid. To this liquid, I'm going to add some other things, just so that I can get it distributed a little more easily. There's some pepper, some salt. Be careful with your salt amount depending on the beef stock that you're using. I've got some thyme here. If you've got fresh thyme, a few sprigs of fresh thyme, just lay them in. That would be fantastic. I've just got dried. That'll go in. Tomato puree or tomato paste, I usually use maybe half a can for this amount. But if you really like it and you don't want half a can hanging around in your freezer, just use the whole can. I'm going to mix that in. And then I'm going to get another spoon. Because the star of the show is Marmite. Marmite is also pretty salty, so that's another reason to kind of watch your salt content. Maybe don't add any salt at this point and add the salt at the end after you taste it. So I'm just going to mix this in. I'm just mixing it into the liquid just so that it gets distributed a little bit better. But I got to tell you, just kind of pour it all in over and then give it a stir in maybe 3 hours. Pull it out of the oven and just give it a stir in 3 hours. And at that point, kind of check your liquid level. If you're doing it in a crock pot, you pretty much don't have to check your liquid level because it has a really tight sealing lid, or most of them do. Okay, so pour that in. Okay, now for the beer. This is our homebrewed porter. As I said, the video is live over on our homebrewing channel now. Porter is a beer that has really dark, roasty flavors. Not quite as dark and roasty as stout. Stout is filled with more sort of coffee-type flavors. It's not going to pour very nicely because I just carried the keg out from the basement, so it's all disturbed. Definitely use a porter or stout in this recipe. There's an argument to be made that if you look at any European nation down through time, you know, from the dawn of beer until now, they all have a stew that is essentially basically the same, that uses a beer from their local region. And the stews have different names often associated with those regions. So use a beer that you like. I would say don't use a beer that has too much hoppy flavor, because that bitter hoppy note, as it cooks down, will just become more pronounced. Use a malty, a very flavorful malty beer would be great. So a stout is a great substitution. Okay, so I'm going to pour that in, and you know what? Let's just give a little bit more. Lid on. If you don't want to cook this with beer, totally understand. Maybe you don't like beer, beer's not your thing. The obvious choice for a lot of people would be to grab a bottle of red wine and pour the red wine in. Great choice. I would suggest a white wine. Try a white wine, even though it's beef and it goes against everything you've ever heard about cooking with wine. Use a white wine in this. You'll be very pleasantly surprised. If you don't want to cook with alcohol, totally understand that. Up the amount of beef stock that you used, and maybe put in a spoon or two of instant coffee. If you don't have instant coffee, brew a cup of coffee and then just sort of make sure that you've got the right amount of liquid and use that cup of coffee. The cup of coffee will bring those dark, rich, roasty notes that the porter is bringing to this thing. Okay, into the oven. See you in 6 hours. Look at that color. That's amazing. Smells incredible too. Okay. Now you could serve this over mashed potatoes. You could serve it over rice. I think it would be really good over mashed rutabaga.
Oh, no. That sounds like a bad plan. Hey, friends. Hey, Glen.
Jules.
I brought the porter you asked.
Excellent.
And I think that'll go well with this. It smells great in here.
Yeah. The color.
Oh, the Scott spoons. Sure.
Well.
Oh, first.
Porter. That's really nice. It's a really nice, smooth beer, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I'm looking forward to the flavors in here.
Right, and you know what to pair it with.
It's going to be so hot. We should maybe talk amongst
Talk amongst ourselves for a few moments? Okay.
A little bit of beef, a little bit of carrot. There's mushroom in there.
It looks like there's some barley.
Mm-hmm. Barley. That beef is so tender. That just falls apart.
That's pretty good.
Onion.
Oh, the onion would be extra hot. Yeah, it's all water. Should have waited longer. Okay, I won't have any onion. I'll just stick with the celery and other things. Oh, it looks like there's some mushrooms too. It is a meaty stew.
This will be a much better stew tomorrow. And the meat that I used is fatty throughout, so there is quite a bit of fat in there. Stick it in the fridge overnight, and then you can peel that off the top. And the stew tomorrow will be amazing. So, cheap meat, braise it. Braise it in beer, a dark porter or a stout, to bring out the flavor. And then, you know, if you use a beer from all kinds of different places, you could call this a Flemish stew if you use the right kind of beer. I mean, that's sort of it. You could go around Europe in different beers and make the same stew and have different flavor outcomes.
There you go.
Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.